All right. And we're live.
All right, good to be here. Brief introductions here. I'm Brandon Treadway, the Director of Growth here at SocialCoach. With me, I've got Ashley Music, our Director of Social Media. Ashley, how you doing?
I'm doing great today. I'm so excited to talk about all the things we're going to talk about today.
Me too. We got a lot of stuff to cover, a lot of really exciting confirmations that we've gotten over the last few weeks. And yeah, ready to dig into a lot of things, particularly around TikTok, but we got plenty of other stuff to talk about. So
All
really
right.
excited to dig into those things. But yeah, welcome everyone to our social media State of the Union. We do this monthly now,
hmm
or we break down everything that's going on in social that is important for you to know. This could be updates to platforms. This could be tactical tips, tactical strategies. So this month, we're going to be talking about everything that we've kind of gotten confirmed from TikTok. These aren't public confirmations. These are confirmations that have happened over one-on-one phone calls with TikTok. So a little bit different than what you're probably seeing in other places. Also, we have some important platform updates that we're seeing around the social media sphere and some takeaways I think you can all take away from our for your social strategies to implement. So, first and foremost, as kind of like a transition point from last month we talked about the TikTok algorithm point system, which is not true. It's a lie. Essentially, to kind of recap for anyone that was not here last month, there was a kind of viral post going around on TikTok, and it was being shared over and over again by TikTok kind of gurus. Um, Gurus in quotation marks,
A lot of
talking
creators.
about how there's this algorithm point system that happens is essentially during the first hour or 10 minutes of your content or however long they were saying it was, that when a piece of content goes up, that the different engagements that happen with that piece of content result in a certain amount of points, and that those points equal to some kind of total that you get for that piece of content. And if it reaches a certain total within a certain time period, that post then goes to the For You page. And this was immediately suspect because why, like, this seems like TikTok is so guarded around their algorithm in so many
Mhm.
different ways that kind of like revealing this part of the sauce felt odd. You sent it to me and I was like, well, let's dig into this. And after we looked into it, yeah, someone had run this through like Chat GPT and was like, what's the secret to TikTok's algorithm? And then this is what it spit out. And then TikTok was like, yeah, that's not true. So,
Right.
but I talked to my liaison, Malua, over at TikTok, who is excellent. I love her. She's great. And I did ask her some questions about how the TikTok algorithm works. And it is a little bit similar to the Instagram algorithm because the Instagram algorithm has now copied TikTok's, but there's some things in here that I think are really important. And I want to talk about these, but I want to talk about this before we get into kind of the rest of the things that we've learned about the TikTok algorithm. So the question is, how does the TikTok algorithm, the For You feed, get created? Because everyone who's posting to TikTok, everyone creating content on TikTok, the real goal is to get to the For You page. 96% of all interactions that happen on TikTok are a result of what is on the For You page. And so it's really kind of like the thing that everyone's trying to get to, whether you are a mortgage and real estate content creator, whether you are a fitness content creator, no matter what space, everyone's trying to get on the For You page. So here's how it works. So first off, everything that you do on TikTok is communicating to TikTok what your preferences are. And as you are, either commenting or liking or saving or sharing or even marking not interested on a certain piece of content, that then tells the algorithm, oh, so and so Ashley is interested in this content. Now, every individual piece of content that is put onto TikTok is categorized, kind of behind the scenes. We'll come back to this a little bit later. So that could
Mhm.
be comedy, fitness, beauty, um, uh, film and TV, mortgage and real estate. There's all the finance. There's all these different kind of categories that we don't know what the specifics are. We know some of them, but not all of them. And everything you engage with tells the platform what you are interested in. Then what TikTok does behind the scenes is that it starts sending you these videos that fit into the categories that you have positively engaged with.
Mhm.
Um, this is, if I and sometimes it'll be just as simple as watch time. We'll come back to watch time again later. But as you engage positively with this content, then you'll get recommendations that fit in line with what you've engaged positively with. Then what starts to happen is that TikTok starts to predict the chances of you liking, sharing, commenting, or skipping on a specific piece of content, and then starts to kind of use that prediction to put the content in front of you that most aligns with the kind of profile that they have built of your interests based on the content that you have been using. That's why for a lot of you, if you open up TikTok for the very first time and you spend a day or two on TikTok, you're the first day or two of using TikTok is probably the worst because
So
it
chaotic.
hasn't learned you yet, right? And you're trying to kind of figure it out. It's the same reason why post first ban, right? Everyone was like, the algorithm is garbage now. It's terrible. No, I what I firmly believe is that the algorithm just reset and it
Mhm.
was relearning everyone all over again. And that's why everyone was getting, content that was way out of line with what they normally would engage with.
Or if you
So
engaged with one type of video, all of a sudden you were seeing only that type of video, and you're like, "Why am I
exactly.
seeing a million Taylor Swift things after liking just one Taylor Swift related post?" It's an
Exactly.
interesting time.
Yeah, or in my case, I would never like a Taylor Swift thing, but maybe I watched one a little bit too long and now I'm still getting Eras Tour content, right? It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So then after they predict the content and they put it in front of you, then they start to kind of they're then sorted by the kind of prediction scores and the top ranked content kind of moves forward. So the content that the algorithm is most deems is most likely for you to engage with starts to move to the next stage, which goes in front of you. Then they have this thing called like a similarity check, where basically in order for your For You page to feel like a living, breathing thing and feel unique, the system replaces content that's too similar with other things that still fit your interests or maybe could potentially be an interest to you on that feed. So, especially when it's like, oh, everyone's talking about this thing right now, it is very possible that if you engaged with like a certain trend or a certain meme, that if this variety piece were not involved, you would just be getting tons and tons and tons of that over and over and over again to the point where you get bored of it and you close out of TikTok. So what TikTok does is that it injects some variety into that and it says these posts are very similar. We're going to pull these apart and fill in the gaps with other content that we think is going to be valuable for you.
Mhm.
And then after this, um, there's the kind of like the final piece of the system uses some extra things to try to find the best videos for you that maybe don't fit into what we've already talked about. And then trying to make sure that the videos that are in your For You feed include content from creators specifically from your region. That's why you're not getting people from Japan or China or whatever, is that there's kind of extra layers of filtering that go on to try to make sure that you are getting content from people that are within your region or within kind of like your sphere.
Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about what like the implementation of all of this stuff and how everyone here can utilize some of the things that we're talking about to create their best content and get on the For You page. Because getting on that For You page is where like I said, 96% of TikTok engagement happens on the For You page. So let's get there.
Right.
Uh,
I also wanna add too, I think we're gonna talk about this as we go, but the idea of content that crosses over into multiple subject matter can also be really helpful for this because maybe you're talking only about mortgage all the time. Some people might be interested, they might be interested in certain finance tips or home buying tips or whatever, but if you're also talking all the time about golf, all of a sudden all the people who are interested in golf and finance, you're much more likely to get targeted to those people as well. So something to keep in mind as we go. I think that was my biggest takeaway from you sharing all of that process that you learned was kind of like, okay, the more buckets you can hit, the more likely you can get into different areas, but without going so niche and so far that then like you're spread too thin over too many different things.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Okay,
let's get into our theories.
so so here's the thing. So Ashley and I have been doing this for a long time now, and we run boot camp every month. If you're interested in boot camp, feel free to go ahead and comment boot camp, and we can talk to you about boot camp. But every month we run this 4-week boot camp where we bring people in and we show them how to create short form video, how to be successful on TikTok and Instagram and all these other places. And through our experiments ourselves, through just using the apps, through trying to test things out, we've kind of come up with a few theories that we had around TikTok. And I just flat out asked. I was talking to Malua, my liaison over at TikTok, and I was like, "Here's some things that I just like need to know the answer to. Like I'm dying inside." And she confirmed a few of these for me, so it's great. So first and foremost is um, everything on TikTok, like I said, is categorized specifically down to like kind of some very niche stuff. And that categorization is very helpful for the For You page, but it's also very helpful for different industries. If you are in the real estate, you're in the mortgage industry, you're kind of in this like finance bucket. And so because of that, people who show interest in, home buying, finance, mortgage, they are going to kind of they're going to fit into this kind of bucket and they're going to start seeing more and more of that content. So people that show that interest, you can get in front of them via the For You page. Now, in bootcamp, we talk about SEO. We talk about the value and the importance of making sure that everything in your content speaks to what you're talking about topically. If you are talking about, San Francisco mortgage, right? And you're talking about mortgages in San Francisco and all this stuff, and you have a Giants hat on, or you just, it's opening day and you put hashtag Go Giants, that is going to kind of mess up your algorithm a little bit, or at least how that video gets categorized, because now you're telling me the algorithm, you're telling me mortgage, 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 baseball. Okay, so now all of a sudden we've got a little bit of a confusion here. Which one is this supposed to be? And it's important
Mhm.
that you view everything that you're doing with that lens. This includes comments. So this, and the theory that you and I had come up with, which was that in the analytics on TikTok, you can see for each post kind of what the top comment phrases are. And we always thought that was interesting. Like it's cool to kind of see what people are saying, especially when you get a video that really pops and you're like, oh, this is what people are talking about. However, the question was always why? Like, what's the point of this? And the theory that you and I have had was they're using this. They are using this to help categorize content to make sure that if a video says that it's about topic A, but all the comments say that it's about topic B, we're going to ditch topic A and we're going to start categorizing this as topic B.
Mhm.
And so comments are being taken into account and they all factor into your video's categorization. So when you create content and you start getting comments, you can utilize this, whether the comments are on topic or not, or off topic or on topic, you can utilize this to constantly be referring back to the topic that you're discussing.
Mhm.
So actually, why don't you give a couple of examples of what this can look like?
Yeah, so I've always thought, so the keywords that you're using are what inform that, right? So if you're posting a video about mortgages, but you're showing a kid's soccer game or you're somewhere else, and all of a sudden people are like, "Oh, are you at soccer? I like soccer. My kid does soccer too." And soccer is the word that's most commented in your comments. Suddenly the algorithm is going to shift to kind of say, "Oh, maybe this is more of a soccer video and it's about soccer, not about mortgage." So it's going to show that to different people. So when you are commenting, especially if people are saying great tip, great tip, great tip. Well, now the keyword being repeated is tip, but it's not really informative for the algorithm. It's like, okay, what kind of tip? So it's probably going to pull mainly from the content in your video, the text on the screen, the captions, the title, the thumbnail, everything visually. That you've said this, everything visually on the screen in your videos is pulled into the algorithm and read by the algorithm. So if you put text on screen, if you have images, if you have graphs, like it's reading all of that. So if your comments are more generic, your video topic is going to be what leads the way. But the moment people start commenting and responding and asking questions, those keywords start to influence the direction of your video. So I pulled an example here from Rebecca, the mortgage mentor, where she was talking about like a tip about saving money, and people were like asking about escrow. And the word I kept seeing over and over and over was like escrow and property tax and taxes and increase and tax increase. And I was like, oh, okay, I can tell where this is going to get sorted. This is going to go more in like a mortgage finance direction, because it's saying like taxes and increases, and it's getting categorized based on those keywords. So the tip that we give people in boot camp is not only can you direct the conversation by being your own first comment. So if you want a specific part of the video to get focused on, you can say like, what are your biggest escrow questions? And you can then get people to ask about escrow over and over and over in the comments. So you can start directing out conversation with that first comment. But then when you're responding to comments, adding in those keywords, we always say try to keep it as natural as you can, right? But adding in those keywords can help do that. So if someone says, great tip, you don't want to say thanks. I mean, you can say thanks, but you want to add more to that, right? You want to say, thank you. I'm glad you found my home buyer tip helpful. What other escrow questions do you have? You know, you want to put in those words that then give the algorithm that direction. And then the last tip we give, which is just kind of a bonus here, is try to keep that conversation going. And what I think this also does is it makes those comments more informative anyway, because if you're not just like, thanks, and you leave it, if you're trying to say, okay, how can I keep this conversation going? You're naturally going to ask a question or prompt something or say, have you dealt with escrow or what's going on? And those keywords are going to more naturally come into play. And it's going to help. All of that just informs on your video and shows active quality engagement, which is so important for your video performance.
Yeah, 100%. Going back to what you mentioned, this all goes and factors into what we're talking about around SEO. That everything that is happening in your video, whether it's written or spoken, all goes into categorizing your content. This algorithm is so advanced that it's
It's so smart.
literally reading anything that it possibly can to try to make sure that this content gets in front of the right people. And that is content. So that's like if your captions are made in the app, if they're made outside of the app using something like Video Catalyst, it doesn't matter. It's all getting read. There was like, there's kind of this myth that if you should do all of your captions inside TikTok because the app, it doesn't matter. It reads all of it exactly the same. So
Right. I think the
it's
fear was if you use an external post scheduler, right? Like if you use a platform like SocialCoach or something else, and you're bringing those posts in, maybe some of that information is being lost, and so the algorithm has a hard time picking that up and then getting your video pushed out. And that's just so not true. And that was a really cool thing to have confirmed, that they're like, no matter what kind of captions you have on there, no matter what thumbnail or what, as long as it's visually like there on the screen, it's being absorbed by the algorithm. And same with your caption, right? Like the written
yeah,
captions also are being taken into account. So I think that's the best, because we've always said if you're using a third-party post scheduler, if that was harmful for your post performance, we would not see anyone using these things, because
right.
then they'd be like, oh, well, I'm not gonna, all the creators, all the big brand accounts, they wouldn't be using them because it would be detrimental to the
Exactly.
post performance. So we've known that that's not true, but it was really cool to hear them say that, like, really even down to the captions and the nuances of what you're putting into your video. Once it's on the platform is smart enough to absorb it all. So that was really cool.
One specific, I guess, tip here, and we've always done this with Video Catalyst, but you may have noticed if you do scroll TikTok that the default that you're seeing a certain type of caption more than you used to. So you used to see kind of like plain, simple, just like white text with a black outline. Um,
Mhm.
you saw that like I used that. That was my preference. But now you're starting to see a lot more of white text with a black background and kind of like a red box going behind, kind of like those old like sing along video type things,
Yeah,
right? Where whatever
karaoke.
words being highlighted is being spoken has that little red box behind it. I asked about this and
Mhm.
I was like, is there anything I need to know to make sure that my captions are being read by the algorithm? She said that the main thing is to make sure that there's contrast. One of the problems that they said they were running into a lot was with people wearing like a white shirt and then they would have the white captions in the front with even with the little outline, it was still difficult for the app, especially if it was smaller, to pick
Mhm.
up those captions and help categorize that content. So that's why the default, which used to be that, is now the white text, black outline with the red box behind it to improve the contrast for each of those captions. So
Mhm.
On Video Catalyst, we have the color captions. That's all there. Like we have that part covered. We have really strong contrast with the outlines.
Right,
But if
and that's
you
what we
are
do that.
going
We
and
make them
you're
really bold on
yeah,
purpose, so they're not only easy to read for people, right, people who are scrolling, but also for the algorithm so that they can see that and go, "Oh, okay, I'm clearly reading this transcript. I know
exactly.
what to do."
Yeah, so just an extra thing there. Okay, hashtags. You know me and my hashtag crusade.
Yes.
So, I when my contacts started talking about hashtags, I want you to know that I think that hashtags have value. I just don't think the value exists as much anymore. And she was like, "I'm glad you're saying that because most
Yeah,
people think
that's
that
true.
hashtags are like the magic fix for your content. That somehow you can just like push your content in front of as many people as possible by just jamming hashtags in there." And
Well,
she
because
said,
they used to be searchable. I think this is the
"Yes,
key. Previously, you could search up a hashtag. So if you put hashtag mortgage tip and there was someone who was like, I want to go look up a mortgage tip, they would put in hashtag mortgage tip and then your video was more likely to be surfaced because you categorized it correctly. But A, they're not searchable anymore. And B, the algorithm's doing that in your keywords even without the hashtag. So you don't
yeah,
need the hashtag to do that. So sorry, you keep going with like why the hashtags actually matter, but
yeah,
I like to illustrate that difference because I think a lot of people are like, oh, like they forget. They just don't know why they use a hashtag. They're just trained in the behavior and then they're
mhm,
confused why 30 different hashtags are not working.
yeah." Yeah, hashtags are just so much different now than they used to be. Like, um, now the value of the hashtag is specifically to help again categorize your video. It's not searchable in the same way anymore, but it's mainly for you to kind of throw in a couple extra pieces to help the platforms align your video in the right spot. The way that I like to, and I see you've got the picture here, the way that I really like to illustrate this as use your um, hashtags as a compass. If I gave you five or three, let's say I gave you 3 or 4 different compass bearings, right? And I say, I need you to, like, this is the direction I need you to go. Here are my 4 different bearings. And one of them has you going northeast, and the other one has you going northeast, and the other one has you going northeast, and the other one has you going south. You would go, okay, what? This one seems wrong. I don't know if I can trust all of these bearings. I don't know what I'm going to get a little frozen up, right? It's the exact same thing with hashtags. They are more a compass designed to help your content go in a direction. They are not a thing to have you go in the same way that a compass points you in a direction. It does not point you, it doesn't take you a certain distance. The distance is up to you, but it's the direction that the compass helps with. That's what
Mhm.
hashtags do. They don't help your content get in front of more people. It just helps you get in front of the right people,
Yes.
by making sure that those topics are aligned. With that
And I
being
think,
said,
oh,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead. No, go
Well, I was
ahead.
gonna say, and I think that's why niche hashtags are so important now because it
Perfect.
used to
That's what I was
be.
gonna say.
Yeah, I was like, I think we're going the same direction here. Haha, compass. But like literally with the niche hashtags, when you put hashtag mortgage, the algorithm already has probably gathered enough from the rest of your caption and your video and the transcript, the cap, like everything else. It's already said, okay, this is probably about mortgage or it's probably about finance. So what you want to do is use those hashtags to say, like, I'm gonna laser beam this in this direction. So, like you're saying with these bearings, south is maybe helpful, but like northeast is an even more specific direction to be going in. So if you can be saying like, don't just go to mortgage, I want you to go to people who need down payment assistance, and I want you to go to first time homebuyers in California who want down payment assistance and are single parents, and those are your 3 hashtags. Boom, you've now like lasered your video into that those niche areas, and then it will continue to show it to mortgage and everything else beyond that because it already has that clocked. So you're just kind of zeroing in right on your final destination.
Yeah, and so I'm glad you brought that up. The temptation for so many people is to want to use these like big hashtags, especially because the hashtags will tell you when you go to type them in, it'll say X amount of posts use this, and
Mhm.
the mindset is, oh well, if everyone's using this, obviously it works.
Right. If there's a million posts under this hashtag, I want to be one of those million popular posts.
Exactly,
But then
right?
you're
But
competing
what
with all those posts.
it's you should view that the other way, which
Yeah.
is I'm screaming this one post into a huge void. it's better for me to, instead of doing hashtag mortgage, to shift my hashtag and narrow the focus there within the topic that I'm talking about. So if I'm talking about VA loans and I do hashtag mortgage, what value is that providing? Obviously, this piece of content is about mortgage. Hashtag VA loans is a much more specific, clearer hashtag that's going to get you in front of the right spot. Um,
Mhm.
Hashtag veterans benefits or something like that. There's so many
Mhm.
different little ways that you can go about doing this. Um, and I like what you have here. Use one hashtag for who you want to reach, one for the location, industry. There's so many like different ways that you can leverage these hashtags, but but you have to test it out. That's the kind of like the hard part is a
Right.
lot of this is kind of testing it out, and each hashtag, each post is different. I just think that people need to stop viewing hashtags as a way to like game the system or get a leg up when all it is just a little extra aid in putting what your piece of content is, right? Like
It's like walking
it,
into a library,
I
right? It's
just was
like you
about to say
first.
that.
Really? Yes, see,
Yeah.
we're on the same path. We're synced
Yeah,
today,
it's like
but it's like
putting like
walking to a
fantasy
library.
on the side of a book.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I'm looking for this specific book. Or like just because a book has fantasy on it doesn't mean that it's going to get rented the same amount as Fourth Wing or whatever, right? Like,
right. It's like either you want a specific title or you're like, I want a specific type of fantasy. So like a mortgage tip isn't that helpful because it's too generic. But if I'm someone who's looking at DSCR loans, or I'm like, I want like a land loan, or like I need something really hyper niche, and you're the person who's tagged your video correctly, your video is going to get surfaced way faster than the person who put hashtag mortgage tip, but they're really talking about a specific loan program and they just didn't tag that correctly. So that's where we kind of say less can be more with, don't do 30 crazy hashtags that are all out there and could send your video in a bunch of different directions and confuse the algorithm. Just try to focus on who am I trying to speak to? What am I like really nichely talking about? And then use those 3 to 5 to really, it's like walking into a library and being like, I know what book I want. I know what section to find it in. Boom, I've got it. That's going to
mhm,
help your audience do that same thing instead of walking in and going, okay, well, I know I want a fantasy book. I know I need a mortgage, but like, where am I going to look? And then just seeing what
exactly.
the algorithm comes up with.
Yep.
Oh, I
All
love it.
right.
We're so in sync. All right, let's get moving.
Okay. All right, talking about engagement and views and like what makes a post do well.
Mhm,
Um, so you and I have kind of put together a bit of like a tier list of sorts of engagement for content. And in talking to my contact, she was like, there's not really like a tier list, so to speak. But then in asking more questions, she was like, well, obviously shares and comments are more valuable because they're like,
'cause people are
so
actually engaging, and you're like, "Wow,
yeah, there's a
crazy.
different
Couldn't have told you
engagement
that."
there. Yeah, I think what, like, it really is kind of getting to is that, and there's not, like, some kind of, like, conversion formula where X amount of likes equals a comment or a share or whatever. It's just what is the intentionality behind the engagement? Um, and in talking to her, watch time, it really is kind of like the number one.
Yeah.
It's becoming the number one priority because even if someone doesn't like a post, even if someone doesn't comment a post, like or watch time takes into account the people that don't think to do that. That they are, but if I pull up on a video and I watch the entire thing, that kept my attention, whether I liked it or commented
Mhm,
or not. And so for TikTok, um, that is the most valuable form of engagement is just watching the whole thing. And if you go to um, if you have a high performing video and you go into your analytics, I can promise you that your average watch time is higher than normal
mhm.
because people are watching it. They're involved with what you're doing there, um, and so
Well,
views is always going to be, and this is a point that she hit really hard, which is that so many people get hung up on how many followers do I have? How many
mhm,
followers do I have? Oh, I've got X amount of followers. And the best way forward is just don't even think about it. Unless you're trying to get to like the benchmarks on TikTok to like be able to get a URL in your bio, or if you're trying to, you know, get into the
hit
creator
10K.
fund as an LO. Um, that's really only the time that followers matter. What really matters is views. I mean,
Mhm.
posts like I've had multiple posts, 1.5 million views. I don't have 1.5 million followers.
Nope.
Like it's just it doesn't work that way. Whatever gets into
Right.
that For You page gets views, and it does not take into account followers.
And that's why we
Um,
push TikTok so much, I think, for loan officers, because I think it's something that's newer. And so most people don't really know how it works. They're kind of like, oh, I'll stay where I'm comfortable, which is Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all these other places. But what we try to encourage is we're like, all of those are more tied to your follower account. Whether they mean to or not, Instagram's getting better with reels and pushing those out. They're mimicking TikTok and they're kind of saying, oh, okay, we see the value in showing your content to people who don't know you to get more attention and attract more people to follow you. But there's still kind of that like, you know who your audience is on those platforms and you are speaking directly to them, which for retention is a great thing to have, right? It's great to say as a loan officer, I know all my past clients are following me and I know who I'm talking to. I want to have a direct channel to speak to them. But on TikTok, this is why you have such potential for growth, because you're like, I don't really know who's seeing my videos, but if I only have 100 followers, but 900 people are watching my videos, that means 800 people that I haven't already talked to are now looped in, paying attention, looking into this. So that's why we're always like, it's worth going, especially if you're doing video already, just put it on TikTok. Like it already exists. Just go see how
yeah,
it does, because the odds of it getting pushed out further are just so much higher. And like you're saying, those view counts because of that can really pop off and you can really see big differences. Even when you have a lot of followers, we see people with hundreds of thousands of followers and they have a video that gets like 2,000 views. And I'm like,
yeah,
whoa, okay. None of your followers saw this. Like this is so it's can be frustrating. And I think that's where people get a little tripped up with TikTok because it doesn't function like the other platforms. And so people are like, I don't know how to measure if I'm being successful, if I'm not getting followers and my views are all over the place and what's going on. But the whole thing is just keep putting it out there and then work for those incremental increases. And you'll see, like you're saying, with this watch time and the retention rate, like we pulled out these stats to show you like what you want it to look like. You don't want this sharp dip of like people stuck around for 2 seconds and then took off. You want this like big thick line showing that people are sticking around and watching your videos.
mhm,
And then once they engage with it, that's also going to drive up all of that for you.
yeah. And this has been further, just on this second bullet point, talking about engagement density or engagement rate. This is like the most important thing. They want to see watch time, and then if coupled with that watch time, how much are people engaging with it based on those views? And there's a new feature on TikTok called the Creator Assistant, and you can see it. The green screen's killing me here. You can see it. It's this like little blue box, and
Mm-hmm.
in that little blue box is an AI generated like recommendation system, basically, where it's looking at all of your numbers and it's telling you like what you should be doing. Sometimes it will tell you, oh, you should, oh, your comments are a little lower than normal. You should comment with a question asking people to blank, 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 whatever. Um, but it is always, always, always referencing views and engagement rates. Your share rate is 1%, higher than normal. Keep it up. Or you're getting way more comments than normal. You're seeing a 5% increase. Like it's so clear from what the emphasis is here that it's engagement rate, comments and shares, and watch time. Like
Yep.
that's all it really cares about. What is interesting too is that, and I don't know. There's so many different reasons for this that I don't even think is even worth getting into. But those longer videos, a minute or more,
Mm-hmm.
do have better engagement.
They
And I
do.
think that it's because, um, like the smaller videos are kind of like fast food, and generally, um, people on TikTok, um, this is what Malua told me, is that generally people on TikTok really do like to get down with a niche. They really like getting like really high quality, specific content that speaks directly to an interest that they have. And that's where these categories really come into play. And right now, TikTok is heavily, heavily emphasizing niching down.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very big focus for them. They have been reaching out to creators in different niches to try to emphasize them creating content in their niche. They really like when people stay in their lane. If you are a financial person, create like 90 to 80% of your content should be focused on that on TikTok. They're okay with adding extra stuff, but they view you as a blank. They view you as a financial content creator, as a film and TV content creator, as a food content creator, a fitness content creator. And so if you do kind of like throw in too many, or you start to veer to where you're like half your content is comedy, they're going to go, what's going on? We don't know how to
Mhm.
help with this. But it's that deeper engagement. And that's where those minute long videos are. There's more effort put into them. There's more time. And they tend to be, there tends to be more meat on the bones, and it's the meat that gets people to engage and comment,
Yeah.
right? If you're just
Well, yeah.
going out there and you're just throwing out, here's a mortgage term and I'm going to define it, like that's cool. Like that's a piece of content that you can put out there. But if you can say, here is a mortgage term you've probably heard get thrown around, I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like and how you can utilize that to get the best, deal on your home loan or whatever, right? And
Right.
then you go through and you start walking through those pieces. Maybe you use a whiteboard. Maybe you have I've been scripting this video to use kind of like M&Ms to explain the the way the For You page works.
Mhm.
Like if I can just do something to help convey that information and make it feel like I'm learning something, like
Yeah.
all the data points to that being what drives engagement.
Right. It's taking these really complex topics. Like people like to learn on TikTok. I think that's something that's highly underestimated where it's everyone's like, "Oh, it's about entertainment." And it is. But usually you're learning something in the process. You're watching a story, but you're learning about, I watch all those skits from like makeup artists and hair people, and they do these skits about clients. But I learned so much about like hair care and things in that because they're trying to tell you, "Hey, you might be annoyed for this reason, but this is why I'm trying to help you." That's if you can do that in a skit or some visual way or by pulling up actual loan scenarios and walking through them and saying, let me, instead of just saying approximate numbers, break down with real numbers. Like I see all of those do so well because it's something very concrete that then people can either say, oh, this is relevant to me or it's not. But if it
Mhm.
is, you've got them locked in. Like the number of times I get something on my For You page that's like, if you are this age and you're this and your personality is this type and you want this goal, here's what you got to do. And I'm like, whoa, someone's spying on me. Whoever's in the TikTok algorithm like knows exactly who I am and what I like. And then the people creating that content are the ones nailing it because they're the ones who are like, ooh, okay, this is what you want to learn. So if I'm a, late 20s single home buyer who's like, I want to own a home one day, but it feels impossible. And I'm in California and it's unaffordable and there's no way. The moment someone comes up on my For You page is like, if you're 27 and you're in California and you think it's impossible to buy a home, hold on, here's what you need to be doing right now. I'm watching that whole video. I don't care. Maybe I won't follow it, but I'm watching the whole thing. So that's where we're talking about like niching down, knowing your audience, and especially like speaking to the people that you help and you talk to on a daily basis. Like share those stories, share the advice you're giving, because the
Mhm.
more specific you can be, the more people are going to see the value. And that's
I
why
love
I
what you
think
said
these long,
about
oh, sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I love what you're talking about education. And I think that that's what's really unique about TikTok. You and I talked about this, I
Mhm.
think yesterday or a couple days ago, that,
Yeah.
you know, every, the ideal situation is that you could post something on Instagram and then you can go and throw it on TikTok and vice versa. And I think that most people who do that, myself included, find that there is some frustration there where it's like, how come the content that seems to do so well, like 700,000 views on TikTok, doesn't do anything on, like, it barely moves on Instagram? And it really does come down to, there is kind of this underlying thirst for knowledge on TikTok that exists that I think is still on Instagram, but the emphasis on Instagram, I think, has kind of carried over from like the meme culture of the like 2010s,
Hmm.
of like everyone used Instagram to send memes to each other. And then once Reels got introduced, the memes kind of just graduated into now being videos. And so people just keep sending those. And that's what gets the most engagement on Reels. Over on TikTok, just think about how many things you have learned from TikTok, right?
Hmm.
Whether it's a product that does the thing that you want it to do, whether it's a book that you've been looking for, whether it's a hack for, shredding chicken, whether it's a movie recommendation, whether it's a tip or a trick for purchasing a home. People look to view TikTok as like this like purely entertainment platform. I disagree. I think that the entertainment is the thing that kind of like glues the education together. Think about
Yeah.
how much news you get from TikTok. It's
Mhm.
like I'm not getting my news from Instagram. I'm not getting my news from these other platforms. I'm really getting a majority of it from TikTok, no matter who I follow. And so I think that it's just such a interesting place, and it is a one where those longer videos that dive a little bit deeper do get more engagement, and that's why I think they perform a little bit better.
I think so too, and I think the differences in algorithms really are kind of the key there of, like, other platforms prioritizing followers and that relationship. I think that's just still ranked higher, and so I think that's why it's
Agree.
not so hyper personalized because it's still kind of being like, "Oh, you care about this person's content because of the person, not because of the topic." And so there could be a person you follow who has like, we're all so multifaceted, right? We could all post about 5 different hobbies or 5 different topics, and maybe I only care about 2 of those things from that person. TikTok will know that. TikTok will know, oh, you only want to see skit videos from this person. You only want to see mortgage tips. You only want to see book reviews or movie reviews. But Instagram doesn't quite have that as sorted. So it's still showing you everything that they post, even if it doesn't fit. And so I think that's why stuff pops off on TikTok the way that it does, because it's not tied to, oh, well, you know them, so you must care. It's very, very kind of anonymous that way, where it's very just like, this could be made by anyone, but if it's a topic that's going to speak to you, even if it has 10 likes, you're going to be one of those 10 likes because you're going to see it, whether or not they have a million followers or not. So that's
Exactly.
where I just see the highest potential for TikTok, and I think more people could do more with it. So just to like drive this point home with the longer videos too, this whole study is from Buffer, and so these graphs just kind of show that most people are living in that 30 to 60-second time range for their videos, which is great. I think you can still do a variety. This is not saying like make every video 5 minutes long because it'll do better. You still have to figure out the right structure for your videos, your strong hook. You have to have good, important information that people care about. But I think this to me shows like you don't need to be afraid of like, oh, am I putting too much in here? If you get bored, that's our biggest tip, right? I'm like, if you watch your own video and you kind of start tuning out, that's a good sign that like you got to mix something up to keep it interesting.
Mhm.
But you don't need to sit there and go, oh no, I'm at like 65 seconds. Is this now going to make everyone scroll away because it's just a little bit too long? No. So you don't have to worry about like cutting every little thing out. But it's really about more of that information that you're providing and really getting people the value in those videos. And again, the more niche and the more detailed, I think that's the combo we're seeing really work. It's not, hey, let me give you a generic mortgage tip that everyone's heard 60,000 times about you don't need 20% down. It's let me show you how if you have 20% down, you can actually take 10% of it to pay the down payment, get closing costs covered by the seller, and then invest that other 10%. And here's how much money you would be walking away with in 5, 10, 20 years. Like that's way more interesting because it's so much more info and so much more niche.
Yeah, we got a question. This is kind of a perfect time to answer it. Myra asked, our thoughts on boosting content for reach, um, or paying for boosting content. I think that I have multiple thoughts on this.
Mhm.
Um, and for one, if you are if you're just trying to get your content in front of as many people as possible, you can boost. That's what it does. It's like the goal behind it. And what's really frustrating is that TikTok knows that. Where yeah, you've noticed this, where like you post it, and it's like not doing that great, and then TikTok will be in your notifications. You could just boost it.
You could
You
just
could
boost it.
boost that.
I feel like Instagram's worse. They're like, "This is doing better than your last whatever post. Go ahead and boost." And you're
Do
like,
you want to boost that, baby? Yeah. Um,
"Thank money's
and
out."
so yeah, if you're just like, I just want to get this in front of as many people as possible, you can boost. My caveat to that is more of a branding thing than anything else, which is that people have a real aversion to the kind of like pay for play on social,
Mhm.
particularly on TikTok. TikTok like is a place where everyone feels so protective of their for you page and is so happy to have a platform that is feeding them content that feels curated to them, that they have put all the work. You see the thing, I built this for you page brick by brick, right? and
Mhm.
I've liked the content I've liked. I have created this place for my content, and then you pay, and now you get to invade my safe space of content on TikTok. I don't like that. Um, and
Well, and it's so
so
clearly like a you had to pay to be here kind of
yeah,
thing. You know, like if
yeah,
your
it's like
content was
this isn't good enough to just show up here.
right. So I it's not a bad thing. If you have a good video or about like a specific program or something that you just are like, I think more people need to see this, boosting's not going to be the worst thing in the world. But I just think it lowers the authentic engagement automatically just by boosting it. So if, only 200 people saw it and you're like, I put so much time and energy into this, how did only 200 people see it? Boost away. Like why not? There's no
Mhm.
there's no harm in that.
Yeah, at that point, who cares?
Right, like, that's fine, but if you're sitting there kind of like, "Oh, this video did pretty well, should I boost it?" Like, that can also work to be like, "Okay, if this is performing higher than normal, maybe I'll just give it that little boost," but just know, like, your engagement's gonna kinda, like, taper off a little bit, like, it'll still go up, but I feel like it'll slow down just because of that, like, the moment the paid promotion comes on or the sponsored or whatever little tag goes on there, people just automatically get a little more skeptical of like, oh, you're clearly trying to sell me something. Like if you're boosting this, you want me to do something. You want something from me. Whereas when it's organic, it feels more like you just made this to be helpful. You just made this to put this out there, whether or
Yeah.
not it made it to my For You page or not. So that's
I
yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, and I've said in the past multiple times that, you know, because I'm in circles with a lot of a lot of creators, and we talk to mortgage and real estate folks every day who are creating content, and we hear things like, "Oh, the algorithm just hates my content," or "TikTok hates me," or "Instagram hates me." And um, to borrow a TikTok phrase, I'm gonna hold your hand when I tell you this. Sometimes it's just the content. Like, sometimes the video is just not good, and, I create content every single day, and sometimes a video doesn't do well, and I look at it and I'm like, "What the heck? I spent so much time on this." But if I really take a step back, it's like, it's not that great. Like, I mentioned this, a couple weeks ago in boot camp that, um, I had told you, I was like, "I don't post on weekends anymore. Saturday and
Mhm,
Sunday, I don't post on weekends because I just that content doesn't do well." It kinda doesn't
mhm,
do well on Saturday and Sunday. But then, um, I had created, like, a video on a Thursday or a Friday, and I put a lot of work into it, but I didn't get to around to posting it on a Friday, so I posted it on Saturday. I was like, "I'll just throw it up on Saturday," and it blew up. It's great. And I was like, "Oh, maybe weekends aren't so bad." And then I started to kind of think about it. What content was I creating on the weekends? And usually it was like, we're out and about. And when I started looking at the content that I was posting on Saturday and Sunday, it was far less.
posting on Saturday
Um,
and Sunday.
it was less the type of content that I normally was creating. It was like off the cuff, like, oh, I just had this like random thought, and it wasn't like my type of content that people expected from me. And so because of that, it wasn't the same quality, and the
Mhm,
engagement reflected that. The people that
right,
normally engage with my content, they're like, this doesn't do anything for me," and so those posts were
mhm,
failing. So to couple that with to pair that with the boost conversation, my concern around boosting content that's not performing well is, are you pushing a video that won't get that people aren't loving in front of people because you want to try to get it more views on it? Where is it better to kind of like learn from the video that didn't do well and say, all right, let's look at this critically. What didn't work here? What do I think
right.
is the mistake, and how can I fix that for the next one?
I think that's the better way because you can always redo it. You can always do it a slightly different way. And we even saw
Yeah.
this in our boot camp this past month. We had someone who was like, "Well, I posted one thing and it got 900 views, and then I posted something that I thought was similar, but then it got like 2 views." And I'm like, "That's a big difference." And going in and looking, it was like, "Oh, okay, well, one of these videos, like they're both like text on the screen appearing as you go, but the backgrounds were different, and one of them started out really blurry. Like the 900
Yeah.
one was just all the text was on screen right away, but then the other one, it was like blurry for the first 2 seconds and then zoomed in and got clear." And I was like, "Well,
Yeah.
there you go. If like someone scrolls and it's like a blurry thing they can't read, they're
Like,
gone. Like they're
I'm
not sticking
gone.
around." So of course that got like 0 engagement because people swiped without even staying for a second just because of that visual. So I think it's so much more valuable to sit and go, okay, looking at that watch time, when are people dropping off? Why do I think they're dropping off? Okay, I'm going to redo this video. I talked about down payment and they stuck around for X number of, seconds. How can I get them longer? Okay, now I've gotten them to stay, but then they drop off after 10 seconds. How do I get them to stay to 15? And then you're going to start figuring out tricks for getting that longer. And that's just the way to go.
Yeah.
All
All
right,
right.
let's keep going. I know we've got a lot today, and we'll breeze through these platform updates. There's not too many this month, which is kind of nice. The main thing being, we talked about this a lot last month about how Instagram is copying TikTok's algorithm, and a lot of the things we're seeing Instagram come out and confirm are actually very true for TikTok. So this is the interesting part of what we're telling you here is going to also be true for Instagram probably in the next coming months. So all these things that are already true for TikTok, you can start operating as if they're true for Instagram. So if you have more questions kind of about that whole how to like niche and how your content and reels are distributed to like the audiences that get wider and wider, we talked a lot about that last month. So that's on our YouTube. You can go check out the full session there. But we really just wanted to emphasize kind of the whole like shift in mindset from virality to more value driven and really niching down on that content that's going to be really specifically helpful for certain buyer types, certain audience types, locations, whatever it is. Like, don't be afraid of getting really specific. You may not see, I don't know. It's a balance, right? You may not see all of those get like millions of views, but sometimes we often hear people saying, "Oh, my lowest viewed video is actually one of my top converters," because they're speaking to such a niche audience that okay, maybe only a couple hundred people saw it, but all of those 100 people were people who would find it super valuable and then decided, "Yeah, I want that buyer guide," or "Yeah, I want to reach out to you to talk about this situation because you're someone who's expert on it and can help me." So, there's that. In terms of other just notable updates, Instagram has finally caught up to TikTok. They have the 2 times speed when you're watching Reels. So I'm a big fan of that. I'm very excited. So you can see it kind of at the bottom of the Reels there.
Well, now
They're
that
also
they doubled the length to 3 minutes, now they're like, "Oh, shoot, that's why they have the 2x thing."
right, because now it's long. So TikTok goes
Now
up to
the
10
yappers
minutes,
are
which
on Reels.
yeah, see, that's exactly it. So you need the 2 times speed. They're getting rid of the notes feature, which I don't think anyone really cares about, but just in case, it's like when you go in your DMs and you see those people being like, here's a question for you to answer, there's like a little note. No one's engaging with
No
it.
one
It
uses
hasn't
that.
helped anything. So they're kind of like, never mind, we're getting rid of that. And I'm like, yep. Other things to know about, the Edits app is coming soon. So Instagram is going to roll out their own video editing app. I'm really curious to kind of see what that looks
I
like.
just got the early pre-order for it. You have
Oh,
to
did
like get
you?
the invite.
That's fancy. Well,
Yeah,
you'll have to
so
test it out for us. Maybe we'll come on and we can play with it live because I'm curious to see what it does, but I think it's going to be pretty similar to most other things.
it's
But
just gonna be a cap cut.
it is. But I'm just curious what they're putting in there to differentiate because I think their whole thing is just edit your videos here instead of other places.
I
But
tell you, if they do where you can just download it out of there and save it out of there, that's gonna be huge because that's what CapCut used to do, or the TikTok algorithm or the
oh
TikTok
yeah,
editor used to let you do that. And now you have to actually post it in order to get your watermark free video.
that's true. Which is
So,
why like external apps are becoming so important because no one wants the watermark because the platforms have told us that they don't show your video if it has watermarks from other platforms. So it's
mhm,
just funny. They're kind of cyclical this way. But for Video Catalyst people, you don't even have to worry because we do all the editing for you. So easy peasy.
life's
Um,
easy.
it's nice and easy. And then the last update that they are potentially going to create tasks from your DM. So if someone like DMs you something and it's like an action item or something you want to remember, you might be able to create a task for yourself. They haven't really told us what that's going to look like, but just something to keep on the radar. For LinkedIn, this one I think people are going to find way more interesting. You can now connect Calendly to your LinkedIn through the book an appointment button. So that's actually really cool because now, if for premium users only, obviously and unfortunately, but if you're a premium user, you can now attach your Calendly so people can click in and just book an appointment with you right there. So that's going to make LinkedIn call to actions really fun because you can now say, "Hey, go to my profile and book a meeting with me if you want to chat about XYZ." But it's also just a nice, easy feature. And then a stat I just pulled because we're video people, video has been performing and is the top performer on all platforms. But LinkedIn's overall video watch time has been up 36% year over year, with more of those videos are now also appearing in the relevant search results. So for anyone who's doing your video content and you have those videos that are performing well, definitely give it a try on LinkedIn because videos only going up and getting more into it. So especially if you have like deeper insights, specific videos about certain scenarios, market news, finance news, all of that stuff is great for LinkedIn because your industry will care about it, not just your clients, but then it can also establish you as that source of truth and kind of get people saying like, oh, you seem like you know what you're talking about. Let's connect.
Yeah, and you and I always say, like, if you're creating content, you should be emphasizing where your people are. Those
Hmm.
people are gonna be generally, like, the consumers are mainly gonna be off of LinkedIn. However,
Right.
I don't want anyone to believe that you and I are saying don't post like videos on LinkedIn. Even the stuff that's
Uh,
very consumer focused, who cares? Throw it
who
on
cares?
LinkedIn. What are they
Put
gonna
it
do?
out there.
Not engage with it? Like, just post it.
Right. Yeah, LinkedIn's definitely, I'm like, it's nice to keep your audience in mind because I think the thing with LinkedIn is people are also there to learn, they're there to connect and network. So if you're doing just generic content that people are kind of like, okay, like some people might find it helpful, but it's more about if you can start conversations, if you can kind of get more of like, hey, can I get people's thoughts on this? Or hey, the CFPB is making moves. Like, what do we all think here? That's going
Mhm.
to be more interesting and engaging. And then what we've seen people say is those turn into like, well, while I have you, like I've been thinking about
Yeah,
refinancing. What should I be? And then that's what turns it also into
exactly.
it. So, and then last platform updates, YouTube Shorts, the views are now following along with TikTok and Reels. So this is what we're saying. Like all the other platforms, like TikTok is the leader right now. TikTok sets the stage, Instagram copies them and then outs the secret. Like because that's Instagram's thing now is confirming all of the stuff that we want to know. So TikTok does it, Instagram copies it, and then is like, here's how we did it. And then YouTube is like playing catch up. They're like running behind, like, okay, we're
Yeah,
coming. Hold
yeah, when
on.
I mentioned that to TikTok, my person was like, "Yeah, like, we've been doing that for, like, a year and a half, and Instagram just changed it and said, 'Here's how we do it.'" Like,
Yep.
they just copy everything that we do. They're like,
Yep.
which is fine, but it's just funny to watch everyone be like, "Instagram revealed the."
Right, they well, and I think what's different is Instagram confirms it. So, like, from the inside Instagram people themselves, they're saying, like, "This is how it works, and you will know for sure." TikTok's a little more secretive, which is why it's cool that we got this insider confirmation. But what's funny is then you just like, okay, give it a year and then Instagram will out the secret. So that's why
Exactly.
we, I think, find value in like kind of making our predictions, having these theories, and then getting this confirmation kind of early was fun because we could sit there going, okay, we've thought that this is the way it's working from what we've seen. We're right. And now we can go forward feeling confident about it. And then I'm sure Instagram we'll announce it soon and we'll be like, "Yep, already knew that. Thanks, bye."
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, so YouTube, the views are just changing. So basically, it used to be a delay of a few seconds if someone watched a video and then it restarted, it wouldn't count as another view until a few seconds into the video. I don't know why, but now it's like the moment it starts replaying, that's another view. So you just might see those view counts be a bit higher than usual. So that's always great. And then the
Yeah.
big one I think people want to know about, the TikTok ban is back. It's at the end of this week, right? The extended deadline ends on the 5th. So we're getting in the final crunch time. The biggest thing I'm going to emphasize is I don't think it's going to actually get banned or go dark again. We already saw that happen. Clearly, no one wants that anymore. So right now, I think they're just going to try to argue to extend the deadline another 30 days until October. I've seen so many different theories of like how long, but they're just going to extend it until they can solidify a buyer. And I know Amazon just threw their hat in the ring. I guess the founder of OnlyFans also was speaking up, but I think Oracle's the one that people are looking at as like probably the most viable choice.
Yeah.
So don't panic. Just keep chugging along as normal, and we'll see what
Yeah,
happens.
as a TikTok creator myself, I mean, my opinion on the ban the first time was, why would I stop creating content? Like, okay, this app goes down, I'll just keep posting to the other platforms I've been posting on. Um, like you said, I don't think that this is going to go through.
Right,
I think everyone's treating this seriously because we did see it go dark the first time, and
right,
it feels like, okay, we got a gimme on the last one, and now everyone's like, okay, well, like, are we serious? And um, we've gotten mixed signals at best from the White House on what their plan is.
right,
And so, um, but the law is written, the bill as written, and the law provides for an extension if significant progress has been made towards a deal. There is far more progress being made right now than there ever has been. So I don't think there's no one would bat an eye if they extended it. So I do think it's going to get extended.
I agree. So I'm like, if you're not on TikTok at all, like you can wait till after the 5th to see what happens before you get started. But if you're someone who was
No, post
playing
your
with it,
first TikTok tomorrow. That's when you should do it.
you know what? It could be fun. I don't know. Like
It'd be
there's
funny.
no better
Hey,
time.
hey, where is everybody? You know,
Yeah. Right. But
people have been telling me I need
we
to
always
get
just
on
say like,
TikTok. Feels like a good time.
yeah, keep operating as normal. If you've been posting, if you've been wanting to start, don't let this hold you back. Like we always say, like even if you get 2 videos up and 400 people see it, that's 400 more people who saw your content and who are now know your face and your name that didn't before. So it's always just worth it. It's worth putting it out there, and you can only go up. It's like a video game, right? There's no negative. You're not losing anything by doing it. You're just gaining the experience. You're gaining points. You're gaining visibility. All of that is just good.
Yeah.
So we promised some actionable takeaways. I think we've been dropping them throughout this, but I just wanted to quickly recap. So, what you can start doing now with all of this information, develop your content with a super specific audience in mind. So, especially, I know we have a lot of loan officers, real estate agents. If you have particular client types that you love working with, we mentioned the person in boot camp who was like, I was a single parent, so I love working with single parents. Drill down on that, become the single parent expert, because that just speaks to your expertise, your experience. It draws the right audience. And what you'll see is more people are going to be like, so I know you help single parents a lot. Can you help me even if I'm not? Like they're still going to come to you and ask. They're not going to turn away, but they're going to see how knowledgeable you are about this one's place. And then that's going to bring them in. So you can audit your current content and take a look and say, okay, am I really speaking to people specifically, or am I giving these more generic tips? How can I get more specific? And then, especially as we talked about with your hashtags, use those to really target the audiences you want. Use the like hashtag California buyers, hashtag, single parent home buyers, whatever it is. Use that really, really specifically and strategically. Secondly, when we talked about all the visuals being absorbed on the screen and the algorithm taking all that into play, add on-screen text to your videos. So if you aren't already having like a visual hook at the beginning, visual hooks being like mainly text. I think text is the most effective visual hook. A lot of people use like I like swing into frame or I'm moving, and that is a visual hook in itself, but it still doesn't give people a reason to know what your video is about or why they should stick around for the whole thing. I think when people put a sentence or a summary or even just a mortgage tip, like immediately that just tells me, oh, I'm watching a mortgage tip. I've now set expectations. I'm either curious or I'm not. So I just think having that text on screen is one of the best and easiest ways to increase your watch time, even just by a few seconds while people are reading it, which will help your video performance increase. And then it's just a matter of figuring out, the rest of the video and structuring that to keep people engaged. Any thoughts or additions there, Brandon?
No, yeah, the biggest thing is, create content with people in mind, and a
Yeah.
specific group of people is the ideal way to go about doing it. We just had a webinar about this a week ago, right? Where we talked about
Yep.
this exact thing. Um, and I think if you can create content for a specific group of people, they will tend to watch longer. And if you can make your piece of content such that it is easy for them to follow along, it's easy for them to pay attention, it's easy for them to connect with what you're saying, do that. If that means on-screen text, if that means having the right hooks, there are a lot of great angles that you can be adding to your content in order to make it something that people can just sit and watch for the entire time that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I definitely agree. And Lisa makes a good point. I just saw the comment. Being careful about focusing on familial status. We're using an example that definitely like you want to be careful about because of fair housing and protected classes. But I think our point and what we're trying to say is kind of you can speak to different niches, but the more specific you can be and the more you can
Per
speak to
video.
specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, in each video, like you don't have to make your whole profile, oh, I only help single parents, but you can still have videos saying, hey, if this is you and this is your situation, I just helped somebody in this situation and here's what I did for them. And that's
Yeah.
my favorite part of telling people for content ideas to go think about your conversations you're already having, think about the questions you're already being asked, and tell stories around those and stop. I think so many people take it and go generic. Like they're like, oh, I got a question about a down payment, so I'm going to talk about down payment in my video. But I'm like, you're losing the personal thing there. What we want is the person going, is it fine if I have $2,000? Can I still buy a house? And you're going, you don't need 20% down. Those two things are really, really today. I just helped somebody buy a house with only 2,000.
I think we have lost Ashley in these final these final moments. Um,
$1,000.
yeah, yeah, we're losing
Dang
her.
it, did
Okay.
I freeze? Am I back?
Yeah, yeah, you're gone. But to
Oh, no!
summarize your point, yeah, using specific examples to hit on the topics that you're trying to address instead of these like generic vague examples of, "Hey, do I need 20% down?" No, you could say, "Let me tell you about a situation where someone thought they needed 20% down and they were actually very wrong." That's it comes with a hook, comes with a very specific setup. There's, that's I think the best way to go about doing that. But that is a good insight though, Lisa. Appreciate that. All right, what do we got to wrap up here? Um,
Yeah, I
any
think
extra
more.
questions? I know that we got a question in our input form about business
Yes.
account versus kind of the creator accounts, and that is
Mhm.
a particularly on TikTok. That's a great question. My personal recommendation is to go with a creator account on TikTok.
Mhm.
There are a couple of there's one main drawback to going the creator account, and that is that if you go the creator account, you cannot put a URL into your bio until you reach 1,000 followers. Um, However, that can happen fairly quickly. So I would just kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Um, You do get a few different things that I think are really valuable. You'll get access to the creator portal, which will have kind of a lot of like tips and things in there. Um, it does give you the opportunity to promote content with the promote tool, rather than pushing things as ads as a business. There's a difference there. Um, Also, um, if you do get to a certain point and your content gets like really good and you get a lot of follow, like you could enter the creator fund essentially. But I think the biggest piece really is getting full access to the music and sound library. Um, Accessing trends is one way to really take advantage of things like what TikTok has to offer and latching yourself onto larger conversations and, find ways to backdoor in your mortgage and real estate content with a larger trend. If you're not in the creator account, if you don't have a creator account, you can't access those in the same way that you could if, um, what did I say? If you're in a business account, you cannot access those in the same way you could
Yeah.
if you were in a creator account,
Right, because of the
because of
licensing. It's all
copyright
about the
and
commercial
licensing.
licensing with certain sounds. Businesses just aren't licensed to use them the same way, so if that matters to you, which I think for especially for creators, especially people trying to get creative and jump on those trends, having that access is good.
Yeah.
Um,
So it is like a tiny bit of a drawback.
mhm.
Um, but once you get to 1,000 followers, then you can throw your URL in there and then you're cooking. So
Right, and I think too what people wonder, they're like, "Well, do I need a separate, like, personal TikTok and business TikTok?" Not just, like, the business account, but, like, should I separate
I
personal and
don't think
business?
so. And I don't think so. And I know we talked about like they want you to stay in your lane. And I think that is true. But I mean, you're creating this account to create content around, you know, mortgage and real estate. Um, if 20% of your content is you talking about, this or that or your family or whatever, that's fine. In fact, I feel like on TikTok, that stuff is better suited for stories on TikTok,
Mhm.
um, more so than it is on Instagram. Like for me, if I'm posting like more personal stuff, I tend to just do that in my stories, rather than like making a TikTok video about it.
Right.
But that's kind of everyone kind of has their own preference there. But for me, I would say just blend the two.
Right. I also think because it helps with your posting frequency, which consistency is something we talk about a lot and the importance of posting consistently. And if you're separating that across multiple accounts, it's so much harder to stay active and consistent on both accounts in a way that will help you promote that growth. So if you're having it on one account, if you're posting 5 times a week because you're posting 3 business videos and 2 personal, like that's only going to help your reach and get you more consistent. So just have it all in the same place
Yeah, I
and
mean, I
algorithm will
will
do
tell
its
you,
thing.
I used to have so, like, I had a personal TikTok account that I started TikTok with, like, that I started watching TikTok back in 2020, or 2019, actually. Um,
Mhm.
and then when I started creating content, I did that on a new account, and I was like, "Okay, this is my personal account. This is where I'm gonna do all my engagement and, share videos and be in DMs with my friends and stuff, and then my content creation, that'll be over here, and that'll be different." slowly
Yeah.
but surely I stopped using that one, and now everything is happening on the creator account. So at that
Mhm.
point, like it just doesn't matter.
Totally. We did get a question from Phil, which one of our boot campers, and he asked, why do I get more views on TikTok than Instagram? So we did kind of cover that, but I'm perfectly okay to recap it because I think it's really
Mhm.
important. And basically what we talked about, if you want to go watch, I think we went way more in depth, but Instagram is still tied to follower count in a way that emphasizes showing your content to people who know you because they think that that will matter more. TikTok is not hung up on that. They're not like, oh, well, okay, if you're posting something, you want your friends to see this. So I'm going to push it, even if it's a topic they're not interested in. TikTok is so hyper niche that they're going to blast your content to the people who actually care about the topic. And so what we've seen with that is there's so much more exponential room for growth. So even if you have 100 followers, your video could get 900 views because it's getting pushed out to people who care and they're much more likely to interact. Like think about it. Your mom and your friends might like engage because they're like, "Ah, it's you and I'm going to support your content." But the people who actually care about the topic are the ones you want to see and engage. They're the ones asking comments and questions and getting in there. So your mom might give you a like because nice, you're posting your mortgage tip, good job. But like, does she actually care about the content? Maybe, maybe not. So TikTok, I think, does a way better job of that. What do you think, Brandon? Like, am I missing any
I
points?
you're 100% accurate. I think the other thing, and I mentioned this earlier, is I do think that Instagram is I'd be very curious to know what the average watch time for content is on Instagram versus TikTok.
Yeah.
Um, because I feel like Instagram's attention span is shorter than TikTok.
Yes.
Despite people wanting to act like TikTok is the is the real culprit. But and I mentioned how I feel like a lot of Instagram's reels activity is a kind of a bit of like a fallout from the meme culture of the 2010s on Instagram,
Mhm.
where so much we know that shares is the number one uh engagement piece on Instagram. It's not watch time, it's not likes, it's not comments, it's shares almost exclusively.
Mhm.
And I think that people are just so used to like that platform has been so conditioned to share memes and shorter quippy videos that anything that's longer or more educational or focus more on deep dive just doesn't seem to really do as well than it does on TikTok. Where I think that the culture on TikTok is, as I mentioned, I think more educational in broad scope, and the entertainment stuff is kind of the glue that holds it all together. So I just think it's like different audiences, whether they realize it or not.
I agree. I think the culture thing is big too. I think the fact that you're not tied to followers and to your same network the same way on TikTok, you feel more anonymous. So it feels more like, oh, if I'm going to comment on a video, everyone in my network isn't automatically seeing that I'm commenting on this video. Everyone's kind of in their own For You page, in their own bubble. And because of that, it feels more freeing to be like, oh, I can just comment what I want. And I'm not worried that LinkedIn's going to show my coworkers that I comment post, and Instagram's not going to show my family that like this
Yeah.
was my content.
Yeah.
You know, it's just interesting how it's kind of unlinked in a freeing way, and they've really
Mhm.
nailed that with that. So I think that's why TikTok has so much more growth potential, and it can be frustrating definitely to be like, why did this do really well on one platform and not the other? But that's why we recommend posting to multiple because you never know, and different audiences will have different reactions to it.
Exactly.
Yeah. No problem, Phil. He said, thank you to both of us. He also said, I'm not being too critical on my views and engagement right now because I only have 21 videos posted. I'm so new that I'm going to wait till like 100 videos to review the data.
Perfect. I
I
was
think
just about
it's
to say
great.
that. I was to say, wait till 100.
Yeah.
That's
Give it
that
time.
that's if you're posting a video a day and you had 100 videos up, that's 100 days worth of content, 100 days worth of views. If you get to 100 videos, I think you'll be feeling a lot better. You're going to look at videos 1 through 20 and you're going to go, "Sheesh, I am so much better now than I was
Mhm.
back then."
Yeah, you just learn as you go. You're gonna figure out, oh, my lighting. Oh, okay, this looks better. Oh, okay, I figured out how to start with a hook. Okay, I figured like you're gonna learn as you go. And then once you can look back and have all of that to pull from, it's way easier to say, oh, this posted way better than normal. Oh, it's because I did a trending video or I was funny or I was on the golf course or like I did something different. And then you can say, okay, let me try to do more like that. And that just
Mhm.
becomes easier instead of being so critical and hard on yourself of like, oh, none of my stuff's getting views. It's like, just give it a minute. You got to try, you got to put it out there, you got to see what lands, and then go from there and get better.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, Phil, one more question. When I send these videos through SocialCoach, it posts also to LinkedIn. Yeah, we absolutely, we had a slide. Again, this will be on YouTube. So if you want to go like catch up, we talked about how LinkedIn videos are performing 36% better, and they're doing a lot more search. They're catering a lot more to that short form video. So it's definitely worth posting and seeing if you get that engagement. The one thing I would try to do is see if you can tailor your captions to start conversations more among like industry conversations, kind of talking more, less like, oh, first time homebuyer tip, and more kind of asking people their thoughts and learning, because that's a little bit more what LinkedIn is geared towards.
I like that.
Yeah. He said, yep, definitely learning. Seems like the short 7 to 10-second videos get more views than talking heads. Yeah. And that might be it for the beginning, especially I think talking heads are harder to figure out how to make them structured in a way that's engaging. I think that you need like that visual hook. You need the hey, here's why you should watch this or why you should care. That they take a bit more finesse and it takes a little bit longer to figure those out. But definitely doing those shorter, fun, trending videos in between, I think is a great way to keep it balanced. And then I think you'll see that those longer videos start gaining traction, and then you'll also start getting better at them as you do the mix. So great job.
Yep.
And yeah, Phil, we'll see you on YouTube. Then you get a little shout out on the replay. But all right, that's what we've got for this month. Thank you all for dropping in, sticking around, asking all your questions. We hope this was helpful. I know we went kind of long this time, but there was just so much to share, and I think there's a lot of value. So this will be up on YouTube, the replay. We also have all of the replays of our previous sessions. So a lot of this information isn't necessarily outdated. It just kind of stacks on top of each other. So if you want to go back and view those old videos, there's more strategy, more tips, a lot more value packed in there. So all on our YouTube channel if you want to find it. And we'll catch you next month with any more platform updates and more strategy tips that we've come up with in the meantime.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.